Welcome and thank you for joining us for our Thursday Treasure program, where we go through some of the lesser seen objects in the museum's collection. My name is Claire Menard and I'm the programs manager here at the Westport Museum for History and Culture. At the museum, we are pleased to offer free programming. We do have an online donation link if you are so inclined, but we understand that this is a difficult time for many. Any support you can offer the museum, however you are able, is greatly appreciated. Today, we have a very special edition of Thursday Treasure. We will be looking at some Civil War objects in relation with our upcoming student-curated exhibit on the Civil War. The exhibit will be free to view in our programs gallery from June 8th, 2023 until November 11th, 2023. Before getting started, we have a video from Talia, a Staples High School student who spearheaded the project. She'll tell us a bit about why she chose the Westport Museum for her research and what she learned.
I pursued an internship at the Westport Museum because I've always been an avid history student and really wanted to dive into the history of Westport further. I realized that the Westport Museum was the best place for me to do this. I was able to work alongside archivists and professionals, and I learned so much and acquired a multitude of skills about researching that I will utilize as I continue my career as a student. In my research about the Civil War, I was trying to understand both how Westport was influential in the Union's victory and also how it was influenced by the outbreak of the war. I was also very interested in the legacy of slavery in Westport. Though slavery was outlawed in Connecticut in 1848, I wanted to see if and how institutions that governed Westport and Connecticut at large were continuing de facto discrimination against Black Americans. In other words, I was curious to see if there were contrasting social ideals between Westport and the Union. In my research, I used archival material like preserved letters, bank certificates, town hall meeting notes, town censuses, and more. I also conducted online research and utilized the Library of Congress and the Connecticut State Library for digitized archival material. I also relied on books and newspaper articles when conducting my research. What surprised me in my research was some of the clear prejudices that white soldiers from Westport had toward Black Americans they encountered, despite fighting for the Union's goals of a nationwide abolition of slavery. I also didn't realize how far Westport has come in terms of its political makeup, as all throughout the Civil War, Westport voted for Democratic candidates over Republican ones, who were usually more aligned with the Union. I've really enjoyed learning about and documenting Westport's involvement in the Civil War, and I'm so excited to share these findings with the community. Thank you.
All right, before getting into our objects, I just want to give a few key dates from the Civil War and talk about everyone's favorite topic, the economy. Yippee! So the official beginning of the Civil War was really on April 12, 1861, when Confederate troops attacked Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina. The battle was ultimately a Confederate victory, and after 34 hours, Union troops ended up surrendering. However, tensions had been rising a while before the war began. President Lincoln won the election a year prior in 1860 without the support of any Southern states. He issued his famous Emancipation Proclamation officially 3 years later on January 1st, 1863. There had been prior drafts of the Emancipation Proclamation, but this is the date the final Emancipation Proclamation was signed. The Civil War raged on for 4 years, until April 9th, 1865, when General Robert E. Lee of the Confederacy surrendered the last major Confederate army to Ulysses S. Grant. When thinking of how a war is fought, most people's minds go to military strategy. Equally important, however, is the economy. The economic situation can make or break an army's efforts, and we can see firsthand how the Union's economic situation helped them ultimately win the war. The North had a much more industrial and diverse economy, giving them an advantage over the South. Ultimately, the Union had more railroads and better means to construct them, factories, and sheer manpower. A Union blockade of the South also devastated the Confederacy's economy. The South's raw materials, like cotton, were blocked off from international markets. Economies overseas were also affected by this. Countries like Britain and France that relied on cotton from the South struggled to maintain their textile industries. These trade blockades also affected Northern residents who relied on Southern tobacco, sugar, and cotton. creative methods were utilized to circumvent these problems. For example, more sheep were raised for wool in the place of cotton, and honey replaced sugar as a sweetener. During the Civil War, the American economy also saw another major change, the introduction of paper money on a federal scale. The Legal Tender Act of 1862 allowed the federal government to print and utilize paper money, often referred to as greenbacks. Paper money, as we see today, ended up overtaking gold and silver coins as our legal tender. On a more local level, when the Civil War began, Connecticut, like many other states, was trying to navigate how to raise its capital, whether that be through taxations, borrowing money, or another avenue. According to a Connecticut Explored article, which we will cite below, quote, in the fiscal year ending on March 31st, 1861, before the start of the war, total expenditures from Connecticut's general fund came to $220,000. By the end of the war, Connecticut had expended more than $20 million, including more than $5 million spent by Connecticut towns. By March 1865, the state's annual revenue and expenses each amounted to approximately $5 million. The state debt, which had been $50,000 in 1861, had risen to a whopping $10.5 million. If you want to learn more about Westport's economy and role in the Civil War, we encourage you to come see the exhibit for yourself. In the meantime, we have some amazing objects relating to the Civil War we'd love to show you. Up first, in the front, you might see this long, kind of thin object. This is what we refer to as a bayonet. Donated by Mrs. N. Hitchcock, this bayonet was manufactured between the years of 1853 and 1867. The blade itself is around 20.5 inches long, which is pretty long, and has a small handle to go with it. It was used on an 1853 Enfield rifle, which was the second most used rifle in the Civil War. In fact, the Confederacy reportedly used this rifle more than any small arm during the Civil War. The Enfield rifle was largely produced by the British Empire and was exported to or smuggled into America. This specific bayonet was found on the battlefield in Gettysburg and was most probably used in the fight. Another hint implying that this might have been used but lost in battle is its very deteriorated condition. You can see it's rather rusted and has many dents. Up next, I want to show you what I am most excited to show, which is this beautiful dagger right in front of me. This dagger was donated by Earl Townsend in 1975 and dates back to the Civil War. The start of the Civil War marked a period of time where daggers shifted from being homemade to being mass-produced by companies. This artifact was manufactured by the Mason Cutlery Company, which began producing similar knives in large quantities. Similar to what was said for the bayonet, many European countries exported firearms and weaponry to the States during the war. The Mason Cutlery Company was based in Sheffield, England, and started assembling these knives when they were in high demand due to the war. This specific dagger actually has an inscription on its blade I'd like to show you. It might be a little bit difficult to read on screen, but it is really lovely to see in person. Gently open that up. Let's see, turn it around the other way so it's facing the right direction. This, which measures around 7 inches long, reads, quote, "Never draw me without reason, sheath me without honor." So we're going to put that right back into its sheath and lie it down right there. Up next, right in front of our dagger, we have what some of you might recognize as a belt buckle. The belt buckle was donated by Andrew V. Ippolito. This artifact is made from brass filled with lead and was made in a bronze mold. It is a model 1839 Federal Infantry waist belt plate or medium-sized U.S. plate. The medium-sized plates were probably purchased early in the war for use with state militias. That's all we really know on this specific belt buckle, but it is a really unique piece in our collection. Now, right next to it, we have here, this is a mold for ball and rifle bullets. This was manufactured by Colt's Manufacturing Company. This artifact was graciously donated by John W. Boyd in 2001. The Colt's manufacturing company was actually based in Hartford, Connecticut, and supported the war effort through hefty productions of weapons and firearms. Connecticut as a whole played an important role in the Civil War and supplied a lot of equipment to the Union Army and the Union Navy. Now, the last the last object we have on display for you on the table, some of you might have been noticing, is this absolutely stunning US flag. This is actually a flag with 35 stars, and these stars are aligned in 5 rows of 7. So this 35-star US flag, which has, like I mentioned, these beautiful hand-sewn stars, was owned by Adelaide Baker and donated by Mrs. P.N. Baker. The 35th state, West Virginia, joined the Union on June 20th, 1863, and it wasn't until October 31st, 1864, that Nevada became the 36th state in the Union. The 35-star flag most likely dates back to late 1863 to early 1864, before Nevada was officially implemented as a state. Now, this flag, you can see, has some deterioration. There are some missing spots. It has actually been lined for protection. You may see peeking through this white fabric. So we have some metal rings on it to hang it, but it is in fragile condition, so we are instead laying it out versus displaying it on a wall. Now, the final object I want to show you isn't actually on the table. It is a document which we will pull up for you on screen. This is a document from the Westport area, and it is from the Commercial and Finance Chronicle. This article, dated from August 19, 1865, tells of local Edward Ketchum's illegal activity and financial problems after the war. You can actually see the title at the bottom left of that reads, quote, "The Ketchum Frauds." When the gold standard was abandoned as a result of the circulation of paper money by the US government in order to finance the war, Ketchum and other Americans were left with worthless gold currency. Desperate, Ketchum forged gold checks which he used as collateral loans. Banker's Magazine in March 1866 reported that, quote, "Ketchum was indicted for forging gold checks and embezzling the funds of the firm with which he was connected." And the article we see on screen reads quite dramatically, quote, "The forgery and peculation with which Edward B. Ketchum is charged stand almost alone in the annals of recent mercantile crime." Even Westport could not avoid scandal, it seems, during the Civil War. Unfortunately, this is all we have to show you for today, but if you are interested in learning more, we encourage you to visit our Civil War exhibit that is free to view in our program gallery from June 8th, 2023 until November 11th, 2023. Tune in next month for our Thursday treasure on maps. While cartography might seem like a straightforward subject, the history of mapping out our globe has been intensely political and the cause for enormous debate. We hope to see you then, and we hope you have a lovely day.